All right, welcome to today's Industry Insights webinar, Building a Modern Campus Network. My name is Linnae Ofleyhaven, Learning Programs Manager at EDUCAUSE, and I'll be your host for today's event. EDUCAUSE is pleased to welcome today's panelists. They will introduce themselves in just a moment, but first let me give a brief orientation in our session's learning environment. If you're using social media, please use the hashtag EDUCAUSEwebinar. We hope you'll join us in making the session interactive. To open the chat, click on the chat icon at the bottom of the presentation window. You can use the chat to make comments, share resources, or pose questions to our presenters. Be sure to select everyone from the drop-down menu to engage with everyone. We will hold Q&A until the end of the presentation, but we encourage you to type your questions into the chat throughout the webinar today. If you have any technical issues, please direct a private message by selecting panelists in the chat dropdown. The session recording and slides will be archived later today on the EDUCAUSE website. Additionally, the content for this webinar is provided by Boldyn Networks, a 2026 EDUCAUSE strategic partner. EDUCAUSE is working closely with Boldyn Networks this year to strengthen the collaboration between private industry and higher education institutions and evolve the higher education technology market. Please be on the lookout for other opportunities to connect with Boldyn Networks throughout the year. Thank you for joining us here today, and with that, let's begin.
Thank you, Linnae. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, or try to. All right, hopefully everyone can see my slides at this point. Welcome to Building a Modern Campus Network. As device counts rise, hybrid learning accelerates, and the need for research bandwidth increases. Higher education IT leaders are facing mounting pressure to modernize their networks. Many campuses still rely on reactive troubleshooting, making it difficult for already resource-constrained IT teams to stay ahead of the demand. This session explores how CIOs can adapt a holistic and forward-looking connectivity strategy that brings together academic research and administrative stakeholders to align network modernization with institutional mission and goals. The University of North Dakota, UND, provides a practical case study. Although UND's network was functional, it had evolved into a patchwork of updates made over many years. By reassessing its research ambitions, its vision for teaching and learning, and its 10-year institutional trajectory, UND determined that shifting to a modern and fully managed network was essential groundwork for future. Attendees will learn today how proactive planning improves reliability, reduces recurring issues, and strengthens the digital experience across campus. Our learning outcomes for today are to understand how to evaluate campus network gaps and long-term connectivity needs, learn how to align network modernization with academic, research, and operational priorities, gain insights from UND's transition to a fully managed model, learn strategies for collaborating with campus stakeholders to create a holistic connectivity roadmap, and identify steps institutions can take now to prepare their networks for the next decade. I'm David Hinson. I'm campus CIO for Boldyn Networks, and my role focuses on working with higher education IT leaders as they think about long-term connectivity and how their networks support teaching, research, and campus operations today and where they need to go tomorrow. Boldyn Networks for Higher Education works alongside campuses to make connectivity something that they don't need to worry about. We help colleges and universities build and run networks that quietly support teaching, research, and daily operations today and as their needs evolve. We do this because when the network just works, IT teams can spend their time and treasure on what really moves the institution forward. With me today is Madhavi Marasinga, Chief Information Officer at the University of North Dakota. Good afternoon, Madhavi.
All right. Thank you, David. So,
how are you?
I'm all right. Thank you. You can hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. I thought we'd start off by sharing, if you would, a quick snapshot of UND today and the role that connectivity plays across your campus.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you for joining. So today is game day for us. That's why My background is Fighting Hawks. We are in Frozen Four hockey semifinals, so showing the support right here. So UND is located in Grand Forks, North Dakota. That's about 75 miles south of the Canadian border. We are way up in the north. We were founded in 1883, before North Dakota became a state. So we actually like to say that UND gave the state's name, North Dakota. We are the flagship. We belong to a university system of 11 institutions. Of 2 institutions of the 11 are research institutions, us and the North Dakota State University down south. And then 4 are bachelor's institutions and 5 are 2-year institutions. We have about 15,000 students. It's a residential campus as well as online classes. We have an aerospace college with an airport, a medical school, and all the other arts and sciences, nursing, all the other colleges that comes along with the public institution. And we also have a separate research arm as well. We are a newly minted R1 institution, and we do have about 100 plus, I think about 101, 102 buildings, all connected to our network.
Wow, that is very daunting and very impressive. You must stay extremely busy.
Sure is.
Well, that's a great setting of the table for us to talk about the state of campus networks today. I know that when we look across the domain at all of higher education, we're seeing a few consistent forces at play. We're seeing explosive device demand and growth, more hybrid and flexible learning models, a lot more research bandwidth needs, and increasing expectations for always on seamless digital experiences. And at the same time, this all comes when all of our IT teams are being tasked with more and more, asked to do more with far fewer resources. And many of our campus networks, they certainly are working, but perhaps not working at the peak that they need to. And that's because they've evolved over years or even decades of incremental fixes, upgrades, and workarounds, which really kind of leads me to my first set of questions for you, Madhavi, and that's from your perspective at UND. Which of these pressures or trends have been the most pronounced for you over the last several years?
Yeah, when I read that report, I thought, you know what? I mean, I don't think anybody's immune to those pressures we have seen ourselves. Some of the things, the data, that particular paragraph on students using data instead of Wi-Fi, we have seen it even in some of our newer buildings. When you look at the heat maps, we have seen that there are areas where there's yellowish, orangish, almost red, where there's no connectivity. And then, of course, the interferences that comes with other devices, which impacts the connectivity as well. When it comes to the residential halls, our goal was to make sure that our students have, at a minimum, the experience that they would get at home, but we wanted to aim for the better than their home experience, because this is going to be their home for a while until they graduate. Then, of course, our students bring multiple devices. Then the other key piece that we wanted to improve was the user experience. Make it as easy as possible for our community to onboard to our network.
Yeah. And some of those issues are really hard to diagnose without some deep digging. You'd mentioned that students opting over to data rather than Wi-Fi. You don't always capture that. It doesn't always show up as a ticket. But you notice it when you walk across campus and you see everybody on their Wi-Fi devices, and it triggers something there. And again, pointing out that over time, our networks have grown organically in some cases and sometimes very uncontrolled. And so where initially these networks may have been designed and devised for coverage, now we're running into issues of device density and radio density that really pops up. And so it's a universal problem at almost every campus. Our connectivity survey we run every year certainly points that out as well. With that said, I want to get into why it all matters. One of the shifts that we're seeing is CIOs moving away from viewing the network as strictly something as technical infrastructure and moving towards seeing it as a strategic institutional groundwork. And a long-term connectivity strategy certainly helps campus move away from being reactive troubleshooting to a position of proactive planning. And this will help IT better connect decisions and priorities to student success, research growth, and operational resilience. And it's all about getting out of that break fix mode that is keeping you from working on higher institutional priorities. So when you think about UND's approach, what did holistic planning really look like for you guys, and who did you try to rally around the flag early on to start these conversations for treating your communications infrastructure as a strategic asset?
Yeah, I looked at this as a critical infrastructure. I mean, we are so dependent on our network now, right? I mean, everything that we do, it's somehow or other connected to the network. So when it goes down, we are almost twiddling our thumbs. Our operations comes to a screeching halt. So for us to meet the mission of our university, we really needed to take a look at how are we going to make sure that network does not become a barrier for our university to move forward, right? So I always, and also like becoming an R1 institution, we needed to intentionally see what do we need to improve so that we can increase our research activity on campus. I call this future-proofing UND. This is all about making sure that we have a flexible network that we can adapt to the needs of the university. One of the things that I looked at was even our funding formulas. How are we funding our network? Because it costs a lot to keep up with the network and make sure that we not only keep it maintained, but also enhance it as well. So funding was also a major piece of how are we going to do this into the future. And then the stakeholders always keep in touch with your distributed IT because, like I mentioned, we have aerospace med school. They have their own IT branches. But when you look at aerospace needs are very different from the rest of us because they have an airport. They have to run that airport, right? Because if for any reason the network goes down and they are unable to train the students to fly the planes, we are losing millions of dollars, right? And the students are also losing their educational time. So this was definitely a strategic move that we did to make sure that we set our university to be successful into the future.
Right. And with the airport operations particularly, it's a matter of security and student safety as well. So many different competing priorities. And I would imagine that it's sort of like herding cats to try to get all of these stakeholders together to try to get a unified view on the importance. I think everybody can agree that it's critical, especially as you're moving into that new role as an R1, the strategic nature of it, but getting everybody started and moving in the same direction. How did you guys go about doing that? Did you collar them and say, this is what we must do in order to be successful? How did that come about?
So these are the conversations. I always believe in building relationships earlier on, right? So building that trust that we always have the best interest of the university. So the conversations need to start from the top down as well as horizontally, and keeping the people informed throughout of why it is needed. That's where that storytelling comes in to make sure that everybody understands why this needs to be discussed. And it's not overnight decisions. These are plans that happens for, at least on our case, we planned for 2 years.
Yeah.
Just having conversations, just getting those spreadsheets ready when it comes to the cost and just gathering any documentation that we get.
Making the case, right? Was it hard to bring those champions along?
In some cases, yes, because it's a very big move, right? It's a high risk, high complex project, right? So yes, it takes time. It takes time to convince even our own people, our own IT people.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a daily task, right? To keep the prize in front of everybody too.
Absolutely. Yes, and this
Yeah.
is on top of everything else that we do, right?
Right. Yeah. Plus our jobs. Right.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Well, I think probably the best thing to do is to start teasing apart how you guys really tackled it. And so let's talk about UND's journey a little bit. What did the UND networking environment look like when you started this effort, Madhavi?
Yeah, so we, like you said at the beginning, we did have a functional uh, network, but it was built decades ago, right? It was designed decades ago. I mean, you know, over the last several decades, how far we have come on our technology side. We also had multiple networks. Aerospace used to have their own network. And then the UND main campus had its own network. There was another research arm that had their own network as well. So a few years ago, I do believe it's about 6, 7 years ago, we brought everybody under one network so that we have the visibility of what's happening. But like you said, over the decades, we bandage it, we duct tape it, and then move on as long as it's functional. But my biggest problem was it's 9 years old. Um, sorry, we upgraded our network over the last 9 years, but still it's the old design. We haven't done any changes to our design to make it flexible. On the other hand, we have more devices coming into the campus now. On average, there's about 4 or 5 devices per individual. So the network needs to keep up with it. With us going into an R1 institution level, research is increasing. So we need to have a flexible network that we can adapt again to what we are trying to do here. One unique thing about us was our network was already managed by the university system. So we were paying the university system to provide the services to us. So pretty much we were kind of already outsourced. So that's probably one unique aspect of this relationship that we had.
Right. So you already had a challenge of expertise that may have been sitting outside of house, right? To this already complex mix of various networks and topologies sitting across your campuses, correct? And so
Correct.
it not only was like making the business case and the experience case, but it was making a very difficult technical call about moving a lot of information that's sitting external, and then sort of resetting the table with a direction. Again, high risk, but very high reward. So, what were the pain points or the tripwires that signaled, we really need to have a change now? Why now rather than later? What was the catalyst for change?
Yeah, so my catalyst was the cost of maintenance because our model of maintenance was CapEx. So every single year, I would see how much dollars do I have left to upgrade a building the next year. So I knew that this was not going to be sustainable whatsoever because it depends on entirely how much dollars we have, right? Because we will run into an issue where we will not be able to keep up to date with the industry. And not flexible enough was another pain point for me because, again, like I said, we were going into R1, increasing research. I needed to make sure that we can have a network where our researchers can get their work done, the innovation side. It took a little bit more time for us to make changes as well because, again, it's an old network, right? The design is old. And I also wanted boots on the ground, meaning I want people here visiting with our faculty, visiting with our research to say, what are your needs? How can we support your needs when it comes to the network? So those were some of the main things. The cost was one of the, I simply could not keep up with the CapEx model going into the future.
Yeah, and I think CapEx actually exacerbates the issue too, right? I mean, when you're talking about multiple generations of equipment across multiple campuses, it hurts rather than hinders, and it definitely makes it harder for you to be able to reliably predict what your outlay is going to be. So you've got multiple generations, unpredictability in terms of when you can actually make the fixes that you need to do that. So um, I want to shift a little bit toward some of the institutional drivers for change. So what were the strategic and academic or research forces that were pushing UND toward modernization? I know you recognize the challenges you had internally with budget, CapEx, predictability, forecasting. But outside of that, what were the other strategic and academic needs that were really kind of pushing this modernization forward?
Yeah, again, going back to the number of devices that our students bring, right?
Yeah.
And the pedagogy is changing as well. How we teach are changing as well. So we needed to make sure that we accommodate for that. The research side, again, the innovation side, we needed to make sure that we have a network that is not going to hinder our ability to innovate and do research. Then, of course, the
Right.
stable, secured, redundant networks, right? I mean, those are expected, right?
Yeah.
Those are not things that we need to talk about. We simply it's
Expecting.
a given. You need to have
Yeah.
that. Yeah, and then again, I always go back to the use experience, not just for our community. It needs to be easy for them to get on to a system and get what they need to do. Because
Right.
network it's not a thing that we should be talking about, right? When it comes to getting your work done, it should be just there.
Yeah, exactly. So, just the financial and the technical challenges alone were pretty daunting, but having a pre-existing relationship with the system as your provider, I'm sure that added a level of complexity in relationship management and expectation setting that I imagine presented a challenge not only for you, but your leadership team thinking about how they need to align the network with your long-term institutional vision. So how did you guys navigate the relationship waters, the political waters? How did you get everybody on side with that conversation? I think the numbers probably made the case in and of themselves, but sometimes those personal issues, they're not always black and white. How did you guys navigate that?
Yeah, so that is why we took 2 years to plan, right? It was again an intentional planning documentation. You are right. I had spreadsheets and spreadsheets and spreadsheets of numbers, right? And then I think you need to understand your audience as well. Who are you talking with to tell this story? So when it comes to the president has the vision for the university, right? So you need to talk about it at that level. When you talk with your VPFO, they want the numbers. Show me the numbers, right? That's where you pull out your spreadsheets and go from there. When it comes to the provost, he or she wants to know how is this going to help our students by having a modern network. The research side, again, the same question: how are you going to help the research, right? So yes, so the relationships that we have built along the way, and then having conversations with our previous provider was critical to make sure that everybody understands this is the best for UND, which in return is the best for the state as well. Again, have the documentation, just keep telling your story until people do hear it.
Yeah. And I think that really helps your audiences too, because in an absence of a narrative, people create their own, and you have to have a compelling case, not only for what you're going to be doing, but communicating the why to each of those audiences in a way that resonates really is how you build those champion bonds between your stakeholders to make sure that they're on board with what you're doing, because not every day is sunshine, right? You come into these things and you have a problem and you want to keep everybody on side with the long-term goals. But that story needs to hold because it will not only guide and be your North Star about where you're going, but it will also help you prioritize some of the decision making along the way to say, this is the framework of what we're trying to do. And if something comes from right field, you can sort of fend it off if it doesn't align with what you're trying to do as overarching, plan forward.
Yeah, correct. And along with the story, I think one of the things that we have done is to kind of tell the story of the implications of not doing it.
Yeah.
Right? What is it that we need to be aware of not taking the path that seems we should be taking?
Yeah. I've always found that leadership teams often don't always catch the vision, but they certainly can catch the consequences, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that it's clear, much clearer to sort of sell the implications of the cost of not doing it. And I think it helps set those priorities more distinctly for you as well. So that's a really smart approach to it. So as we're thinking about choosing the pathway forward, how did you guys go about trying to discern, all right, what's the right direction forward? How did you approach evaluating your options and sort of deciding, this is the right path for UND to go down?
Yeah, so like I said, we planned this for 2 years. It was just simply planning for 2 years. So the way I looked at it, we had 3 options. One option was to status quo, stay as is. The second option was to bring it in-house, bring it back to UND. Third option was to outsource it to somebody else, right? So each and every one had its own pros and cons. Like if we were to stay with the previous service provider, it will be status quo. It's very unlikely we are going to redesign the whole network because we don't have the time for that. Right? It's like pulling your bandage off. We don't have the time for that, and we know that we will not have the resources to even do that down the road. Bring it in-house, that's another, the pros and the cons for that as well. Yes, we will own it, but do we have the resources to do that in-house? Again, we live in North Dakota. Not easy to get people to move over here, especially during the winter times, as it's hard. The third option was the finding a partner who could do this for us. So by again looking at all the pros and the cons, we decided, all right, the partner seems to be the best option of all 3 for us.
Right. Now, did you set about talking to trusted colleagues around higher ed in terms of like trying to say who could do what we want to do? How did you guys set about the decision making? And was it an RFP process? Was it trusted advisors? What was the starting point, and how did you go down that pathway for deciding?
Yeah, so we actually did an RFP a while back for our housing, the residential network. At that point, I think that was just before COVID. So things happened, we did not go through with that. But when the time came again, we looked around. Yes, we did talk to people. And then, of course, through our consortiums, we were able to go with the vendor that we have. But it was, again, fully vetted with multiple conversations with so many people to see how does this work.
Okay. I've got a question from the chat, and it's this. How has having a managed network partner changed the way you think about allocating internal resources, whether it's the budget, staff time, or priorities? And where are you now able to invest more than before because of this selection?
Yeah, so from the funding side, now we have a OpEx model, operational model. So we, which completely took out my CapEx. Now I don't have to worry about that because I know that the network will be upgraded as needed, and I don't have to worry about that. So that is definitely very helpful on my end. And then we also have 2 field staff here, boots on the ground, like I said, who takes care of the immediate needs that happen on our end as well. So those are some of the the better experiences that I have on this end. And from the funding side, it makes my life a little bit easier, trying to not to having to find funds every single year.
Oh yeah, it's just there, but it's baked in and predictable.
Right.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I do have a question about look of success, but we'll talk about it after we talk about the transition. So once you guys made the decision, what happened next? What were the first steps that you needed to undertake to make this transition occur?
Yes, so knowing that this is, like I said, a high risk, very, very complex project, my first thing was to get an internal project manager to manage the whole thing on our end, right? Because it takes a lot of resources on our end. So I just wanted to make sure that we manage our resources the way it needs to be managed to execute this project. Then, of course, the communication side, communicate to anybody and everybody, starting from the leadership, the shared governance, the university senate, the staff, the student gov, the distributed IT. Again, keep reminding people why we are doing this over and over again, so that they have a better understanding of why this is needed. Again, setting the expectations of, I never expected our transition to go 100% perfectly. Too big of a project. It's too complex. We know that there will be hiccups. So get the community ready for that. Get the community, set the expectations of the community that we may have hiccups, which we did have hiccups, but not to an extent of a complete shutdown.
Sure.
Right. So, but it's expected though.
Right. Did you have everybody on side? Or were there any internal friction points in terms of like not everybody being aboard with the decision? And did that cause any impediments in terms of getting off the ground from starting a dead stop and to getting off the blocks?
Again, complex project.
Yeah.
So we have to expect, even internally, for people to not to agree to certain things. But those are the things that we have to patiently go through, right? Because pointing fingers at each other is not going to solve any problems. So we need to have good facilitators, good give time for people to make sure that they get to decompress and then think through again, and again try and have the conversations in a cordial manner, in a professional manner. Yes, it will test your patience. That's again too complex. It's a complex project.
Yeah. But it does create, it's an opportunity-rich environment for truth telling, right? So you learn to hurt quick but heal fast in these situations, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be a survivor in this project. You want to be a success story at the end of the day, and you want to get there together. And
you had to keep the end goal in mind, right? Because at the end of the day, it is for our students, it is for our faculty, it's for our staff that we are trying to do this. So sometimes we will have to put our personal feelings aside and
I've always found that these projects, you have to eat a lot of ego to keep the eye on the prize.
Absolutely.
You really do.
Absolutely. Leave it at the door.
Yeah, 100%. So what would you say were some of the most important internal partnerships critical to making the transition work as smoothly as it did?
So definitely the distributed IT, if you have other IT areas that they manage certain services, definitely they need to be at the table. And for us, the state was also involved, because once our WAN, the wide area network, is managed by the state. So we needed to make sure that they are also part of this conversation. And then our previous pride, the university system, was also part of the conversation, because some of our network goes through the data center, which they manage, right? So there were so many integrations that needed to be handled properly, so that we don't have any breakage somewhere along. And then we have remote locations as well. So those were also needed to be at the table to have these conversations.
There's a question from the chat that asks, how many buildings across the whole campus were converted to the latest standard, and how long did it take Boldyn to complete the upgrades? And what about your satellite campuses? Did Boldyn upgrade those as well?
Yeah, so we upgraded anything that belonged to UND. So we have 101 buildings. For the administrative side, we started the transition somewhere in May and then finished in September. I do not recommend that for anybody, simply because it's a lot of effort. I was very fortunate to have a team, individuals who were willing to put in the work, weekends, nights, and then come back the next day. I'm very fortunate with the people the dedication. And of course, again, it's a partnership, right? You have to work together to get these things done. So, yeah, 6 months is definitely testing your patience along the way.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Definitely better to be on this side of it than the other side, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
So, throughout that Herculean effort, what surprised you along the way? Either unexpected challenges or even unexpected wins, right? So we go into it with one set of expectations.
Mhm.
We come out with a different lived experience throughout. So what were your surprises?
I think the biggest surprise was how little documentation we had.
Mm.
And because when you don't have enough documentation to understand why certain things were done certain ways, now you're kind of guessing, right? I mean, even think about the VLANs. We have so many VLANs, but nobody could remember why certain VLANs were there. Yes, we can pull it off and see what happens, but then that's not the way to do it either. And I think one of the other pain points we had was the surprises was the how complex the building access control systems were. Because again, like I said, everything's connected to the network, right? So, and how many vendors we had providing some of these services. So you had to reach out to those vendors and work with them to get these things corrected. And sometimes we are on their schedule. So that took time. Those are some of the surprises that I would have rather had we didn't have. But on the other hand, the good surprises were, like I said, the dedication of the teams. They were fully invested in it. And then the patience of the community. That I was pleasantly surprised by that, how willing they were to give us some grace when some things go wrong. Again, I'm talking about pockets, not the entire campus or anything, but pockets of people who had a little bit of a struggle to get them back online or on the right network. But again, I go back to it's such a complex project. These
Of
things
course.
are expected.
Well, that fugitive institutional knowledge is so hard to quantify, and you don't know it until you run against it. And usually it's in a crisis when you have the least amount of time to solve the problem, when you're trying to put your hand to those critical pieces of information. And honestly, it kind of makes my head hurt to think about, managing IP spaces and VLANs across 100 buildings and having it be coherent and moving forward at the same cadence. I think it's a testament to your planning, that 2 years that you guys put into it. But even along the way, I would imagine that you discovered quite a few things there in terms of just those pockets of missing documentation and pieces of lore that resurfaced in ways that you probably had one or two people that said, "Oh yeah, I remember when we did that 5 years ago, 10 years ago," and now it's a matter of memorializing that so that you don't lose it the next time. Has that documentation process gone fairly well for you?
So we are working on the documentation. So this is like moving house, right? I mean, you leave whatever you don't need, and then do what's right in this new environment. So yes, the documentation is happening even as we speak now.
Yeah. Well, the rule around my house, Madhavi, if you've had it boxed up for a couple of years, you don't need it, you throw it away. So
don't even open it, right?
So I want to talk a little bit now about results and impact, right? So what would you say was the most significant improvement you made since modernizing the network? What has really been the standout achievement?
Yeah, I think so. Our academic network was opened up the fall of last year. One of the biggest improvements that we saw was the requests that came in for our onboarding, particularly from the student side. So it went down by 94% trouble tickets. So we generally see quite a few students walking up to our help desk to onboard themselves to our network. But this time we hardly saw anybody coming through. So we actually even questioned, do the people know that we still exist, that this is where the help desk is? But that was a testament to how easy it was for people to onboard. That was a good, and this goes for the guests as well. The guest network was also quite easy to log in. And the other one we saw was the Wi-Fi coverage. Earlier I mentioned the heat maps. When we actually looked at the heat maps, we actually see greens and greenish yellows, which is actually good across the board as well. So again, I mean, we are not even 1 year into the transition, so it's way too early to talk about all the outcomes. But when it comes to the research areas, now we can actually think about what else can we do, right? So we are going to wait for a few more months to make sure that we settle down and then start thinking about what else can we do with us.
Yeah. Well, I imagine a big part of that assessing, how you're doing is going back to your original look of success for all the different goals you said you wanted to achieve once you moved there. Are you finding that you're hitting those marks in terms of meeting your look of success that you set at the beginning? And are you on a good trajectory there to meeting those?
Oh, we are getting there. Like I said, we are not even a year into this, right? So I'm hoping because I still look at us as transition mode. I don't think we are at an operational mode yet, but it's getting closer though.
Yeah. There's a question in chat that I think you answered, but I'll ask again just to make sure that we got a complete answer on it. The question is, once the installation wrapped up, how did the student move-in process go in the residence hall? And were there any issues onboarding students from the network? And I think you answered it, just saying you had fewer drop-ins to get out, correct?
Yeah, that's for on the academic side. But if the question is related to the residential side, that was very smooth. That was very smooth. Yep. Again, I mean, you will see issues, but not to the extent that it could be.
Okay. There's another question in chat, and this one is a little technical, but I think you'll be able to speak to it. And the question is, where's the demarcation between outsourced network and organizational services like VoIP, data center, load balancing, firewall and policies, WAN, internet? And it looks like they're talking primarily layer 1 through layer 3 or higher levels as well. Can you speak to how those lines of responsibility are drawn? What's in Boldyn's wheelhouse? What sits internally within your team?
Yeah, WAN is the state. That's a wide area network. As soon as it leaves our perimeter, that's entirely the state. The local area network is what Boldyn manages for us. Voice, we do have another vendor, but then again, it's voice over IP. So yeah, that is part of the network as well. Yeah, anything between the walls and underground is ours. We manage that.
Okay. All right. So that includes fiber and copper, right?
Yep.
Very good. Yep. All right. So if you were advising another CIO, what outcomes should they realistically expect in the first year? Now that you are at that 1 year mark, what can others realistically expect?
Yeah, realistically, I think small wins. Again, it's going to take a little bit time for us to sit down, think about that. What else step, right? What we did was to set the stage, the foundation to talk about where can we go from here. Right, so the small wins are the student experience that we have seen. The students not having to turn on their data anymore because they have Wi-Fi, right? So don't expect a complete overhaul within the first year because, like I said, you are still tweaking to get it to a point where it should be at an enterprise level.
So what does the support for the network look like now? Vastly improved, lower tickets.
We are still in the transition. So
Okay.
we are seeing tickets up again here and there. I'm not talking like major problems, but here and there you see individual tickets coming through, and that's the way it should be as well. Because again, we are still trying to tweak it, right? So yeah, there are still improvements that can be made, and which we are working together to make those.
All right. Here's another question from the chat, and it really kind of relates to your comments about the documentation. But the question is, considering the age of the prior network, did transitioning to a new network provide an opportunity to evaluate security policies, compliance, and governance? And what were the challenges you guys faced with your existing governance structures?
Yeah, we definitely did. So we actually redesigned our network, and we have a beautiful VLAN matrix, which I love. Every time I look at it, the security comes in right there to make sure that we have. We did not have that previously. So there was, again, not having the documentation, but this one, we were able to redo the whole VLAN and then understand how are these things connected. So that's just one example of how we managed to take a look at our security and then strengthen where the firewall rules and all of those things, what we needed to. So now it's documented.
Right. Very good. Well, this has really teased apart a great deal of the case study here, but I want to give an opportunity now to set up some guidance for others and sort of make it actionable for everybody that's listening here. So, based upon your experience, what are the first three things a campus should assess when evaluating its network? They were looking internally, kind of putting the mirror up against themselves. What are the three things they need to be looking at?
I would say take a look at to see whether your current infrastructure is meeting your needs, not just for the current situation, but for the future as well. Because I truly believe that if you have a good foundation, then you can do whatever you want to with that, a flexible foundation that can adapt to what's coming your way. Right. So then again, I go back to the cost because it is very expensive to keep a network. C is that your cost structures, whether it's meeting your needs. I'll just give you one quick example. Before like about nine years ago, when I actually came to this position, our network was supported by individual colleges. The funding came from individual colleges. So what happened was that became a line item in their budget. So for any reason, if they don't have enough dollars, the colleges would not have adequate access points for wireless. But at the end of the day, the student is the one who's actually paying the price for that because they don't have enough coverage. So about 9 years ago, what we did was to say that the network is a base level of service, meaning we will provide the funds, the central IT will provide the funds to make sure that our network experience across the university is the same. Right, so that the colleges and other departments don't have to pick and choose over their network to pay for something else. So that is something that I would say, take a look at your funding models. How are you funding these things? Is it sustainable into the future?
So having said that, how can CIOs effectively bring academic research and administrative stakeholders together to kind of make this happen? Well, how did you do it?
I think it's about, again, I go back to building trust from the get-go, not for an effort like this, but just because they need to know that IT is an enabler, that we are there to help them do their whatever they want to do. So build those trust from the get-go and visit with them, talk to them, listen to them. then they'll be willing to come to the table to have those conversations with you, as well as they can be the champions for you as well. Because
Right.
sometimes when IT keeps talking, it's like, okay, this is an IT thing, nobody wants to listen, but most of the things that we do are actually business things. We are just providing the foundational work that's needed to get where we want to get to.
Yeah. Yeah. It gets back to that storytelling, the narrative, and contextualization of explaining the why. And it kind of leads us sort of the last topic here on guidance, and that's, what governance practices have helped UND maintain alignment and momentum throughout this project, right? Because it is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. It's going to happen over many months, maybe even years, in order to write all the history that's gone before. So, what practices and structures have helped you guys keep the train on the track?
Yeah, I think it's mainly the communication piece. So any large initiative like this, we start with our executive leadership president and the cabinet to make sure that they understand what we are trying to do, and then take it to the university senate, the faculty, the staff senate, the student government. So the more you communicate, it doesn't matter whether it doesn't have to be always good, but as long as they are aware, I think people understand it a little bit more better than giving some information at the last minute. So yeah, build those relationships from the get-go to make life a little bit easier down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you're the psychoanalyst, and sometimes you're the truth sayer, and sometimes you're the mechanic. It's quite the journey, given the complexity. Well, I want to now kind of step into more of our QA role here, but I think the through line is that if you look beyond immediate upgrades, really long-term readiness is really the differentiator, I think, from a strategic standpoint, and shifting that focus from the break fix day-to-day tyranny of the urgent is to sort of raise your sights on that larger horizon. So, if you were to put your hat on and crystal ball to look forward, what trends or technologies do you think CIOs should start preparing for now?
Yeah, I think we need to prepare for AI, right? It's already here, right? So we definitely need to think about the core infrastructure, whether you're going to build it in-house or whether you're going to have a hybrid environment or whatever. We have to think about those things. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is to make sure that it's affordable for everybody. Because right now it's so expensive, particularly when it comes to the students. If they can afford it, they will buy their own subscriptions to ChatGPT, Copilot, or whatever. But what about those who cannot afford? How can we create an environment for those to make sure that everybody has an equal shot at this? Right. So then again, when it comes to the cybersecurity, right, it's only going to get worse. We know that.
Right.
So let's plan for it to figure out how can we address any kind of issues that comes through as fast as we can, because with cybersecurity, the speed matters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not simply a thing in and apart that you can separate and say, well, we can sort of compartmentalize this. It's locked in and baked in with everything we do. It's like we have encompassed cybersecurity and compliance, and now we've got this next animal of AI that we then have to layer atop all the other structures that we have on before.
Mm-hmm.
So as we wind down here and come to the end of our time, I want to be very cognizant of remaining time at the top of the hour. I'll ask one more question, and that's, what small steps can an institution take today that will pay off over the next 5 to 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the very small things you can do that really have a snowball compounding effect?
Yeah, again, go back to the relationships, build your relationships. Yes, it's not a technical thing, but it's something that is going to be very helpful when we are trying to do these large-scale projects. Again, having a solid foundation matters, because if our solid foundation, even when it comes to governance structures. If we don't have those things, it's just going to make life difficult to get to where you need to. And reliable funding sources, those are, again, things that plan ahead to see what we are trying to do. Is it sustainable down the road?
Yeah, I don't know if you would find this to be true, but I've always found it really true that great project management is really great expectation management, right? And that communication layer really buys you a lot of forgiveness when you need it, and you know you'll need it from time to time. But that continued communication, not only at the beginning and at the end, but in the middle, when you're describing where you are in the journey and challenges faced, I think our constituencies really appreciate that transparency and trust that we try to establish. With that said, Madhavi, I just want to issue my sincerest thanks for sharing your experience and UND's journey. It's a great example of how being intentional and holistic in your planning can really make a big difference on campus. So very grateful that you were able to share your time and expertise and wisdom about taking big swing and big risk for big rewards. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. If anybody wants to reach out, please do. I think you have my contact information right there as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and before I hand it off to Linnae, I just want to say to everyone who's joined us today, thank you for your time and your thoughtful questions. We hope this discussion has given you some really good practical ideas, and hope you can take it back to your campus and have some really meaningful discussions. So, Linnae, with that, I'm going to throw it back over to you. And in case we've got some other questions that I wasn't able to address in line, we're happy to take those now for the time remaining.
Perfect. Yes, thank you so much. On behalf of EDUCAUSE, thank you all for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the webinar. Before you sign off today, please click on the session evaluation link found in the chat window. Your comments are very important to us. And I don't believe we have any further questions. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you, Linnae. Thank you, Madhavi.
Thank you.